I'm trying to be patient. Hashtag dominatin'.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_Beeble. Yesterday we talked about the NBA schedule. Earlier in the week we looked at players in worse situations this year versus the previous season. Today what we're going to be looking at is players heading into their second season. So last week we did fourth-year players, we did third-year players. Now we're doing second-year players. So this is a bunch of rookies from last year, a fantastic rookie class. And I have finished the first set of projections for Basketball Monster. I've gone through every team once. That doesn't mean they're finished, of course. That's just a rough pass through. But the way that a lot of these guys have come out has been really, really interesting. So we're going to talk about quite a few of them today. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. Now, yesterday I said to people watching the YouTube video, if you wanted to leave a comment below, I'd pick two people out of that list and tell you the 8-cat, the 9-cat, and the points league ranking in my initial ranks on Basketball Monster. I've picked those people out. Willie Cauley-Stein and Lonzo Ball were the two answers. Might as well do it again today. So if you're watching this on YouTube, comment down below the player's name who you want to know the ranking of, and I'll pick one person out of the comments within the next 24 hours and leave their initial projected rank over on Basketball Monster. But let's talk about their second-year guys, because there's going to be a shit ton of value. And just one other quick note on the projections. I've done it so far. Only 2 rookies come out in the top 100, but for these second-year guys, we're looking at about between 9 and 11, depending on your format of second-year guys who are in the top 100 pretty comfortably. So let's talk about some of these guys. A pretty obvious one to talk about here, of course. Let's look at Trey Young. From the Atlanta Hawks, Young obviously had a really strong second half of last season, finished the year as the 59th ranked player in fantasy, but this year I think we're looking at a really big opportunity for Trey Young, and I think that in a lot of drafts he's going to go, he will definitely not go off the board outside of the first 3 rounds. He will go in the second round of many drafts, and I think that is absolutely fine. I can see him being this season as a top 20 player. In fact, over the final 2 months of last season, he was the 20th ranked player, averaging 24, 5, and 9.5. There's no reason that he can't actually get better, and he did that while shooting just 34% from 3, so that can actually improve. I think Trey Young has a real chance to be the number 1 second-year player out of this group of rookies. Now, he was the 3rd best player out of that group last season. I think in terms of fantasy production, I think that he can jump up all the way to number 1 with the opportunity he's going to be given in Atlanta this season. I think he can jump all the way up and become the number 1 second-year guy in the NBA. Let's look at another guy, Anthony Simons, who we didn't really see anything of last season at all. In fact, he was the 492nd ranked player. Only 7 minutes a game, and a lot of that boosted by the fact that he played 48 minutes in that final of the season where he put up a huge value. Now, this season, things are a little bit different. Now, I don't think he's going to be a standard league guy necessarily, but I'm pretty sure he's going to play over 20 minutes a night, backing up Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum, taking on the Evan Turner / Seth Curry role. Yes, Kent Bazemore and Rocket Rodney Hood are there, but they're going to have to fill in for Mo Harkless as well. So Simons, I believe, will be the first guard off the bench, the backup point guard. He'll do some scoring. The team raves about him, a guy we never got to see in college, but really did start to stand out, played well in Summer League again. The shooting is going to be the concern. Can he do anything in terms of defensive numbers? Can he do anything in terms of being able to set others up and get assists out there? That could be somewhat of a concern for Simons. But those of you in deeper leagues, he's got a realistic chance, I think, of getting near that top 200 mark. And in a situation where CJ or Dame does go down, there is a lot to like about Simons. Now, of course, those guys are locked in long term, but don't look at that from a dynasty perspective and go, well, Dame and CJ, they've just signed extensions. We have seen guys who sign contracts, they're just out of here straight away. In 2-3 years' time, the NBA changes so much, so it's all about looking at where that talent is, whether someone like Simons gets traded, Dame gets traded, CJ gets traded. These all things seem like crazy things at the moment, especially Dame and CJ, but it's all, of course, a possibility and opening up that opportunity. So I think Simons is in for a pretty interesting second season in the NBA. Troy Brown, another guy like Simons who we didn't see much of last season, only played 14 minutes a night and was the 394th ranked player. Troy Brown is in an opportunity here with the Wizards to be their starting small forward. They did bring in CJ Miles, who was likely to be their starting small forward, but he's dealing with foot surgery on a stress fracture in his foot, which is never a good thing for a 33-year-old man who shot 39% from the field last year. So Brown, I think, is going to have an opportunity to start. He started at the end of last year when Ariza was resting or whatever was happening there. Now, Brown has struggles with shooting from the line, from three, from the field, but he is a strong rebounder. He can get assists. We just need him to be able to do some other things. Now, for reference, his final 15 games of last season, he played 28 minutes a night and averaged 9, 5, and 2. That meant he was the 234th ranked player. That is far from spectacular. I think he can get those sort of minutes and probably more on a regular basis. And in a deeper league, he is a guy that can step up. And if that shooting comes around, if he plays 32 minutes a night in a 14-team format, Troy Brown goes from a guy who barely cracked the top 400 to being a guy who probably can be a top 200 player for this coming season. Support for today's show comes from Manscaped, number one in men's below-the-belt men's grooming. You may have seen Manscaped on Shark Tank and in Men's Journal. They named them as they named their Lawnmower 2.0 as one of the best tools in men's grooming. Get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. That is LOCKEDON at manscaped.com. The next guy that we take a look at here, we've got Wendell Carter Jr., who started off the season promisingly as the starting center for the Chicago Bulls. And then, of course, Jim Boylen came in and just destroyed any semblance of a team and an offense. And Carter's season went to shit. Then he got hurt, and we didn't see much of him after that. But he should come in fully entrenched as the starting center again. What Boylen does with him is going to be intriguing because, again, Boylen really discouraged him shooting, which was disappointing. But even still, with all of that, in only 25 minutes a game last season, Wendell Carter Jr. was the 113th ranked fantasy player. Give him an extra 5 minutes, give him increased efficiency. He shot 19% from three. He is a mid-30s guy, I reckon, from three. That's where he can get to. The extra development as a second-year guy, he can pass, he can steal, he can block shots, he can rebound, he can score, he can shoot. He can literally do everything. I think he's got top 25 ceiling, not for this season, but top 100 should be an absolute guarantee for Wendell Carter. Top 50 is maybe pushing it, but if he finished the season as the 60th, 55th, 50th best guy, I wouldn't be surprised. The minutes will be there. The partnership will be there. Hopefully there's more confidence in what he's doing shooting from himself and from his numbnuts head coach, and that enables him to start to grow. Now, the presence of Thad Young there is a little bit concerning. Not that Young plays the same position, but they want to get Young on the court. That means they push Larry Markkinen up to center, and that might take some of those minutes off Carter. So I think he's still getting 30 a night at least, but instead of getting from 30 to 35, he might be just capped at that 30-31 mark, while Young gets his 31 to 30, 26 to 30, and Markkinen gets his 30 to 34, and all those guys have to fit in there, and that's not even including guys like Daniel Gafford or Chris Felicio or Luke Cornett as that fourth big man, depending on how the Bulls want to run things. And of course, Otto Porter, who should be playing minutes at the 4 as well. So there is some concern there, I guess, but I think 30 minutes a night seems like an absolute minimum for Wendell Carter Jr., who did show plenty of signs last season, just got a little bit muted towards the end of his season before he was out. And he did have a core surgery this off-season. That is a little bit of a concern. We would have liked to have seen him at Summer League. We didn't get to see that, but he'll be right for the beginning of the season, and hopefully it doesn't take too much away from his development. Next up, we look at the Fort, Kevin Knox. I talked about him earlier in the week in players in worse situations this season, and I think Knox is one of those guys. Now, he finished the year 278th last season. He played 29 minutes a game. I don't think he's playing 29 minutes a game. He was poor last year. Remember, RJ Barrett plays that position. They're going to have to shoehorn Marcus Morris into that position. How is Knox going to play the 29 minutes a game? Now, maybe he does. Maybe they just fully believe that he is the future and they're going to play him big minutes at the expense of these guys that they went out inexplicably and signed to these contracts. I don't think that's the case. I think they're not as high on Knox. They dick Knox around now. Not a guy I was high on heading into the draft, not a guy I was high on at all last season, but they also did him a massive disservice. Before the season, he's going to play these minutes, he's going to start big minutes, lead the team, blah, 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 blah. 2 days before the season, no, he's not going to start, he's going to come off the bench. They played him out of position, they moved him around, they jerked his minutes all over the place. He's not good, but he also wasn't put in a position to have any sort of success at all. So I'm not really big on Kevin Knox, but I thought it was worth mentioning him here just to see, as a second-year guy, he is someone that we probably should have been talking about, and you know my thoughts on Kevin Knox pretty comfortably. A guy who's going to be a big riser this season is Myles Bridges of the Charlotte Hornets. That team has, I think to call it a lack of talent is a fair understatement. He didn't do massive amounts last season, but he did come on strong at the end of the year. Overall season rank of 214th in just 21 minutes a night. But we're going to see a lot more from Myles Bridges this season, and he should be a top 100 player this year. He's going to play in excess of 30 minutes a night. He's probably going to be the second offensive option on this team. He can block shots, he can get steals, he can hit threes. He's relatively efficient without being extremely efficient. For example, over the last month of last season, he played 30 minutes a night, was the 79th ranked player, averaged 10, 6, and 2.5 while shooting 51 and 80. Now, I'm not sure that 2-point percentage, which was absolutely through the roof as a rookie, is going to stick at that level, but he's got room to improve his threes. He was only at 33% over the course of the season. He's not going to be an assist guy, but the steals, blocks, threes combo, along with an increase in minutes, along with an increase in usage, should all be really interesting for Myles, and I can see him being a top 75 guy pretty comfortably for this upcoming season, which is a big change from where he was last season, which was outside that top 200. But yeah, there's still there is some element of risk with these second-year guys. Do they take that necessary step forward? But when we look at the Hornets roster, you feel pretty confident that it is just going to have to be Myles Bridges who's going to have to put up these numbers, considering the lack of talent on that squad. Another player who got a run as a starter at times last season was Josh Okogie of the Minnesota Timberwolves. And the way that things sit at the moment, I would have to think that Okogie is put in as a starter again this season. I think that they'll go with him starting at shooting guard, run Jarrett Culver off the bench, and have Wigo over there at the 3. Last season, Okogie had some moments. He also had some struggles, there's no doubt about that, but ended up with 24 minutes a night, averaging 8 points with 3 rebounds. Now, shot poorly, 39 from the field and 28% from 3, so that's really going to be the swing from Okogie. But towards the end of the season, the minutes did start to push up, and he became an excellent steals option. Over his final 40 games of the season, in 26 minutes, he averaged 1.5 steals. That's enough to have value in lots of fantasy formats. Now, if you can get that shooting to come up, true shooting was just 50% during that time, that needs to come up. No reason he can't be a standard league player, getting those steals with hopefully an increase in efficiency. Will he get this big bump in usage? I'm not sure. Will he be able to contribute in anything outside of steals with the occasional 3? I'm not sure about that, but with that sort of value, and we talk about it all the time, Corey Brewer, Tony Allen, those guys made fantasy careers over being players who can get 1.7 steals a game. And Okogie, he could be that guy. I think the minutes will push up. I think they'll be consistently up this season, and that's going to help his overall value for this coming season. Let's talk about a guy that ended the season absolutely red hot, and that is the Padawan, Collin Sexton of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Ended last year as the 181st ranked player, and that's really impressive considering he does nothing else apart from score. He ended up with 17 points per game, 3 assists, and under 3 rebounds as a starting point guard with 0.5 steals. They are all piss poor numbers. The scoring's not, but he shot really well. 40% from 3, which gave him 1.5 threes a game. Still really limited attempts and needs to up that volume. And 84% from the line is really strong from Sexton. We know at the end of the season he had this big string of 20-point scoring games, and that was really good. Over his final 26 games, he averaged 21 points per game. It also didn't mean... let's try again. Try to reframe that sentence. It meant he didn't crack the top 100 as a fantasy player because he literally did nothing else. But those points are really useful, and he brought it with pretty strong efficiency, 47 and 81 from the field and from the line. Now, can he bring those other numbers in? That's the question. I'm not that confident with Sexton. Bringing Darius Garland in, who's going to play next to him, a full-ish maybe season of Kevin Love, that means that some of that usage that Sexton was having towards the end of last season, think Jordan Clarkson's rookie year, that 25 usage he was having, will he be able to maintain that level of usage? I'm not so certain that it will stick at that level. Can the shooting stay at 40% from 3? I'm not certain. And then can he offset that by adding assists? Again, I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. Out of a lot of these guys, I think Sexton's at risk of being a little bit overdrafted based on that 20-point scoring streak. And in points leagues, he is a lot more valuable than in category leagues. And Garland there, that might push Sexton actually off the ball more and somehow even drop that assist number from 3 per game, which of course is not going to be a positive. Can he average 20 points per game again, as he did over those final 20, 30 games of the season? I think he might be close, but not quite to that level. But he is definitely a name who, at this point last season, I wasn't looking at him as a standard league guy, but now, of course, he is. Actually, before we go on to the next one, just remind you guys to check out Locked On NFL preseason, ready to go at the moment, and former NFL scout Matt Williamson, along with the new host Brian Peacock, is taking Locked On NFL to a new level. It is your daily national NFL podcast with Matt's unique take on the game. Follow Locked On NFL now on your favorite podcast provider. All right, let's go on to the next guy. Who are we looking at next? It is the man, Shai GilgeousAlexander, who moves into a completely different situation. Last season, in those games that he played for the Clippers, under 27 minutes a night, he was the 133rd ranked player, averaged 11 points with 3 rebounds and 3 assists with 1.2 steals, shot 48 and 80, really strong season. Now he's in Oklahoma City. I think he's going to be the starting shooting guard for this team. I think he's going to take on a starting point guard role if Chris Paul gets traded. But even if he doesn't, 30 plus minutes should be there for Shai, and I think he is going to absolutely rock it up. And I reckon he's close to a top 5. He's in the top 5 to top 7 second-year players for this coming season. I think he's going to score a lot. The efficiency is going to be the key there, but steals, assists, rebounds are okay as well. I think he's going to really surprise a lot of people. And one of these guys, and sometimes it's hard looking at rankings. I'm going to do a show about this, but looking at what happens at the start of the season versus the end of the season, I think Shai overall can be like a top 70 type of guy, but towards the end of the season, top 40 is absolutely in play for GilgeousAlexander. So we've got some real interest in him playing off the ball as that starting shooting guard is my guess in Oklahoma City, and then things can really ramp up if Chris Paul gets traded, or of course the inevitable when Chris Paul gets hurt. All right, next we go on to Deandre Ayton of the Phoenix Suns. Ayton, the number 1 rookie in fantasy last season, the 41st ranked player, averaging 16 and 10 in under 31 minutes. Of course, the problem with Ayton, the lack of defensive numbers, 0.9 steals, 0.9 blocks. I think he can take a big step up this season. Now, can he jump up into second round territory? Well, I think his minutes are going to go up. I think his usage is going to go up. I want him to start taking threes. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. And the shot blocking needs to come on. Now, it did start to look a little bit better at the end of last season, so I think he's going to improve in that area. Is that enough to take him into the second round? I think, depending on what you're looking for and the format of your league, he could be a back-end second rounder because getting consistent, big-minute centers who we know are going to be efficient from the field and the line, which is exactly what Ayton is, that can be really useful. So at the end of the second round, I think he's in play. He's probably more of a third-round guy, and that's the area that he was drafted last season and return that value. And I think he's probably going to be that 24 to 34 type of a player for this coming season. But it's all going to come down to, will he get those extra minutes? Will Monty Williams give him the extra touches? And more importantly, will he block shots? If he's at 0.9 blocks again, it's a problem. If he's at 1.5, then he is a top 25 guy, really without too much debate there at all. So a big season coming up for Deandre Ayton of the Phoenix Suns. The second pick in last year's draft, Marvin Bagley, wasn't the most successful rookie season from a fantasy point of view, 141st overall, and I think the low minutes that he played a big part in Dave Yeager getting fired, only 25 minutes a night. At the end of the season, we saw those minutes rise. Over his final 20 games, he played 28 minutes a night, but it still didn't put him in the top 100 fantasy players, and he averaged 18 and 9, and in general, you look at someone going 18 and 9, you go, that's good, that's a good fantasy player, and it is. But minuscule assists, 1 a game, half a steal, 0.9 blocks, 0.9 threes, and 69% from the line. They are all things that cause big negatives for Marvin Bagley. So can he improve those things this year? You'd have to think, those minutes are going to skyrocket. So he's not going to play 25 minutes or even 27 minutes. He's going to be the starting power forward. He's going to be in excess of 30 minutes a night. He's going to have a pretty big usage, and he can easily average 20 and 10 this season. It's what he does in the other areas. Can he block, like Ayton, can he block 1.5 shots? Because if he does, he moves into the top 50. Can he hit his free throws? Because then he moves even further. I don't think he's a top 50 sort of a guy, but he's a pretty comfortable top 100 player, and there is obviously room for those other areas to improve. I think we're going to see, especially in points leagues as well, Bagley can take that step up because of his ability to get points and rebounds, 2 of those big volume categories, which really do help in points leagues. And I think we're going to see some big numbers from Marvin Bagley this season in those areas, but some of those underreported categories like your assists, your steals, blocks and threes, those low volume categories, not underreported, those low volume categories, that's where he struggles. and in free throw percentage. And that's what overall, when I do my dynasty ranks, why I have him down lower than a lot of people expect, is because of those deficiencies. They did show up last season, but he still was able to score, he was able to rebound, and that provides a level of value in itself, even if those other things are still yet to come on. Let's talk Luka Doncic of the Dallas Mavericks, who last season was the 54th ranked player in fantasy, the second overall ranked rookie in that group. And the reason he was down that far really was efficiency. Big negatives in field goal percentage, 43%, and that got worse over the course of the season as his teammates were traded away. And then inexplicably a 71% from the line and 33% from three. Really poor numbers there. Everything else was a huge positive. Now, if those numbers just go to average this season, Doncic is a top 20 player, and I firmly believe he will be in that second to third round range this season. It is all going to come down to, can he shoot free throws like he did in his entire career in Europe? Will he be able to have a little bit less in terms of usage this season with Kristaps Porzingis? Will that help him out? You would have to think that there is going to be some benefit there, but he is the number one guy on this team. He is a leader. He can put up plenty of numbers, and he's going to have that opportunity. It's all going to come down with Doncic to efficiency. If you're punting percentage categories, his value goes through the roof. But I do think that we see so many second-year guys take those steps forward to be able to improve their efficiency numbers. I don't think Doncic is going to be any different. I also don't think he's going to be just carrying the size of the load that he had. A 35% usage over Dallas's final 2 months of the season, and that dragged his true shooting down to 52%. It was at 55 over the course of the season on a usage of 30. I think he can top that 30% usage again this season. Whether he can make those necessary strides in terms of efficiency does remain to be seen. But I think it's a decent bet to make. Now, in terms of where you draft Doncic for this upcoming season, that's going to be, are you willing to take that risk in the second round? Because he's going to go top 20 in pretty much every draft. I think I'll probably look at him, maybe a back-end second round guy, because things can get a little bit iffy, especially with all the injury concerns. Like, where are you drafting Paul George or Kawhi Leonard or Joel Embiid? Question marks on so many different players this season that Doncic, maybe with his role, you feel okay about him in that area. But it's going to require a big step up. I believe he can do it, but there's 30% chance that he doesn't do it, that efficiency doesn't jump up, and that he does take a step backwards, or at least stays the same in that area, which keeps him around that top 40 instead of a top 20 sort of a fantasy player. Let's go to Fanapants. Kevin Huerter of the Atlanta Hawks, entrenched as the starting shooting guard. I thought he was really good last season at times, the 171st ranked player in 27 minutes. Now, he is a guy that I think has a chance to push into the top 100, 30 minutes a night, and we need a second ball handler on this Hawks team. Kent Bazemore did a bit of that last season. Evan Turner's going to run the second unit, but in a starting lineup that's going to have John Collins, it's going to have Alex Len, and it's going to have DeAndre Hunter, guys that really don't pass. Huerter is going to have to be that other guy alongside Trae Young who can get things moving, and that's where his value is going to come from. Can he also finish at the rim better? He shot threes well, but twos were really bad for Huerter last season. So can he change that narrative around? And only 46% on his twos last season. He needs to get that up to 50. I believe that he can do it. He's been working a lot apparently on finishing through contact, and that was one of the big reasons why De'Aaron Fox took a step forward last season, is getting to the line, but also finishing at a higher rate. I'm not saying Huerter is De'Aaron Fox, because he obviously isn't, but taking that step up in that area is what I think is going to enable Huerter to jump 40, 50, 60, 70 spots, whatever it is, in his overall ranking for this coming season. So another guy who is going to be a standard league feature for this coming season. Let's talk Jaren Jackson Jr, Triple J. The thing that kept Jackson back last season were fouls, and he was the 84th ranked player in 26 minutes a night, averaging 14 and 5. He had 1.5 blocks, a steal, a 3, shot 51 and 77. They are all the caveats or all the building blocks of an excellent fantasy player. Will he be able to stay on the court? Now, some of it was his foul trouble, some of it was Bickerstaff and some really poor coaching. I don't know what Taylor Jenkins' theory is on saving guys who get in foul trouble, whether they let him play through it. I was very critical of Bickerstaff, as I should have been, I believe, for taking him out after getting 2 fouls and then never putting him back in and really limiting that playing time. Jackson, I think probably... Look, I have Jackson as the number 2 player in Dynasty out of this group of players, at number 2 behind Doncic and ahead of Young. So I think he can obviously get to being a top 15 sort of a player. But Will that be this season? Will he learn to keep himself out of foul trouble? Because this is a guy I think that can be a 20-point per game scorer, 7 rebounds, 2 to 2.5 blocks, 2 threes a game, can pass a little bit and can be efficient. There's so much there for him in terms of fantasy value, but those minutes I think will just be capped again as he tries to learn to stay out of foul trouble. If he gets 33 minutes a night, then the top 40 is there for him. I'm just not sure that he gets there. There is a bit of a risk of him being overdrafted just with people assuming he's going to stay out of foul trouble. It's a decent assumption, but there are other guys who I feel a little bit more confident about, like Deandre Ayton, who will be able to get those minutes and stay out of foul trouble the majority of the time. So Jackson obviously is really, really interesting and has got a perfect fantasy game. It's just, can he stay on the court? Let's look at Rowdy Rodions-Kurucs of the Brooklyn Nets, a surprise starter last season, a guy that I liked quite a bit heading into the season. Didn't think he'd play as much as he did. He was the 227th ranked player. I think he will be the starting power forward for this Nets team. Now, reports today coming out that Carmelo Anthony is working out for the Brooklyn Nets. I think if they do sign Melo, if they start him at power forward, that's not a great idea. Kurucs has got the artist formerly known as Taurean Prince there. I think Kurucs showed so much last season. He played well in Summer League to be that low usage, floor spacing, gritty type defending power forward. I think he can actually start and play 25 minutes a night. Will that be enough to get him into standard league discussions? Probably not. I firmly believe that he will be a top 100 player at some point in his career. Now, of course, Kevin Durant coming back next season is going to put a dampener on that for Brooklyn, but Kurucs could be anywhere. He could play next to Durant. He could be on a different team. This season, I think he's probably one we leave for deeper leagues. I do think he's going to be that starter, but getting enough minutes or enough touches or enough of those peripherals in this second season for Kurucs is probably going to be a little bit tough, and I'm not sure he quite gets to that level, but he is someone that's absolutely worth monitoring. A player that all of you have been waiting to hear about, I'm sure, is Mitchie Robinson of the New York Knicks. Robinson, of course, was fizzed out pretty consistently last season. He had his own foul troubles, much like Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., but he did end up the year as the 80th ranked player, 5 spots ahead of where Jackson ended up in only 21 minutes. Just the 7 points for Robinson, but 6.5 boards with 2.5 blocks on 69. Giggity! Percent shooting from the field and 60 from the line. Robinson's an interesting conundrum. He is going to go really high in drafts. I think there's a chance that he gets drafted in the second round in certain spots, and that's probably going to be too rich for me. But as a third round guy, I'm okay with it. But this is my problem with Robinson, right? There's the foul issues, no doubt. There is the Fizdale nonsense, no doubt. There's the fact that the Julius Randle's best position is center. Taj Gibson's best position is center. Bobby Portis's best position is center. So how are they going to manage all that? Those guys will play a lot of power forward. They shouldn't, but they will play a lot of power forward. But does that put a cap on where Robinson's minutes are? Does Robinson come out and just play 34 minutes a night? That seems unlikely. Down the stretch of last season, after DeAndre Jordan was injured or benched or rested, whatever nonsense it was, Robinson was playing 25 minutes a night and putting up big numbers. He was the 30th ranked player over the Knicks' final 27 games, averaging 9.5 and 9.5 with 3 blocks, with that elite efficiency as well. Can he maintain that over a course of a season? I think he can get to around 10 and 9, but will he be able to maintain an improved free throw shooting, which is what really kept his value up there? Will he be able to stay on the court? And the other problem I have with Robinson is when you're looking at roto leagues, right, guys with big deficiencies are harder to roster. He's got poor free throw percentage. He hits no threes. He gets no assists. There are definite holes in what Robinson does, right? In head-to-head leagues, that's fantastic. Those blocks are excellent. Rebounds, field goal percentage, huge. But the way that he plays, the inconsistency in how he plays, or the inconsistency in terms of what his minutes are like, is a real worry, I guess. Now, over the course of the end of the season, he seemed to be able to reduce that foul problems. In fact, over the final 8 games, 31, 37, 33, 34, 28, 38, 35, and 23 minutes. That's very encouraging. But the thing that also happened in that time is when he was playing those 30 minutes a night, he was blocking the same amount of shots as what he was doing when playing 25 minutes a night. So that happens often with players as they try and stay out of foul trouble. Their block rate does decrease. That's obviously really impressive, and it's almost a double-double with 3 blocks every night. Really, really strong stuff from Robinson. But will he be able to maintain that over a course of the season? I think he's going to go no later than 35. There's no way he's falling past 35 in drafts. I feel pretty confident with that. If you're taking him in the top 20, there's a real risk in that, but it could pay off. It's all going to come down to how you're building a team and can he stay out of foul trouble and get you 3.5 blocks a night. Because if he goes from 3.5 blocks to 2.5 blocks, then he's not a second round guy, and that's really where the value issue lies with Mitchell Robinson. Mikal Bridges is the last guy I want to talk about in detail here for these second-year guys. I think there's a chance that he is the starter in Phoenix. Regardless of if he starts or not, him and Kelly Oubre will be getting around 30 minutes a night. He provides those defensive numbers. He gets steals. He can hit threes. And I think that his shooting was quite poor last season, Mikal. I think it can improve pretty significantly this season. He's going to be a low-usage guy. He's going to be like a fantasy glue guy, a PJ Tucker-ish type, who's not going to score many points, but hits his threes, gets his steals, blocks some shots, and becomes efficient. I think that's what lies ahead for Bridges. In the future, I think he's got top 50 upside moving forward. Probably not this season. But he is, to me, a guy that should be drafted in all standard leagues, who's going to have a fairly significant role now that TJ Warren and Josh Jackson are gone in Phoenix. If he starts or not, it doesn't matter. He should get those 30 minutes a night. He should provide good steal numbers, out of position blocks, solid enough rebounding, hit his free throws, all those things. And maybe there's a big step forward that comes in some of his offensive aggression in his second season. So Mikal Bridges is a guy that absolutely is worth looking at. Some other names to throw out there as second-year guys who played well last season: D'Anthony Melton and Kenrick Williams. I'm not sure where they fit into the rotations this season, so hard to rely on them. Mo Bamba.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Really poor last season, then had that leg fracture issue. He's back in business. He should be the backup center for the Magic, but he's only really going to be a deeper league player. Same with better than Doncic, Alonzo Trier, who had some big moments for the Knicks. I just don't know where he's fitting into this every night rotation. And Jalen Brunson really ended the season strong for the Mavericks, but with Delon right there, Brunson moves into that primary backup role. Another guy to watch, I guess, is the Rock DJ, Robbie Williams in Boston. Their center position is absolutely in flux. Enes Kanter's the starter, but then is it Vincent Poirier? Is it the other guy who I can't think of, Daniel Tice at the moment? Or can Williams step into that backup role and be a very, 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 very light Mitchell Robinson type of player? As a blocks streamer, that's a name to watch there. Dante DiVincenzo, he could be in the rotation in Milwaukee after missing nearly all his rookie season. He is a name to watch. Zaire Smith, DRC, the Baby Shark, Bruce Brown.
Baby shark,
Brown's going to be the starter at shooting guard. Can he get enough touches to be useful, or is he just going to be a steal streamer? Will he play some backup point guard? There's interest definitely in the Shark there. Aaron Holiday becomes a regular rotation player this season as well in Indiana as the backup point guard behind Malcolm Brogdon. Devontae Graham, the same, moves into that primary backup role in Charlotte. And hey, I think he's going to be better than Terry Rozier as an actual on-court player, not as a guy in terms of overall fantasy value. MC Hamidou Diallo.
Stop. Hammer time.
He's a guy that also I think is going to be a regular every night rotation player for the Thunder, but not necessarily a great option. Landry Shamet, another guy I probably should have talked about more in depth. He's going to hit his threes, he's going to get his minutes, but that's all he's going to do, so he becomes an excellent three-point streamer, not much more than that. And a couple of guys we didn't see much of last season, Michael Porter Jr. and Janan Musa. I think both of those guys have a chance to be rotation guys. Porter more so. I just don't know what to expect, and I don't think we should be expecting big minutes from Porter after he's missed the last 2 years of basketball. And another name that people want to hear about is Lonnie Walker. I just don't see where Lonnie Walker fits into this Spurs rotation to be an every-night big-minute guy. He is at least a year away, I think, from being a regular fantasy contributor. That'll wrap it up for me looking at second-year breakout guys. Check my Twitter feed and the Instagram and YouTube for details on leagues. Nearly all the Roto leagues are filled up. All the head-to-head leagues are filled up. We're looking to fill those last remaining spots in the Roto leagues and the points leagues now for the Red Rock Challenge. Comment below what player you want to see the Basketball Monster rankings of. And follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Subscribe to the show. Leave a comment. Thumbs up on YouTube. All that great stuff. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Deandre Ayton.